Good morning, beloved family. My name is Terrence, and I'm gratefully blessed being in this process of recovery. Today, I want to talk to you about the pain of resisting change. Last time I shared about the pain of resisting what is, I talked about September 26, 1991, the day I finally stopped fighting reality and admitted that I was addicted. But what I discovered after that day was something important. Accepting reality was only the beginning. The real challenge was learning how to change. You see, I thought surrender was an event. What I discovered was that surrender was a process. On September 26, 1991, I surrendered to the truth. But after that, I had to surrender to change. And change wasn't easy, because change meant letting go. It meant letting go of people, letting go of places, letting go of things, letting go of habits and ways of thinking, letting go of ideas that got in my life for years. Suddenly, I couldn't go where I used to go. I couldn't do what I used to do. I couldn't think the way I used to think. Even walking down certain streets could trigger old thoughts. Certain smells could trigger memories. Getting a paycheck triggered old behavior. Everything seemed connected to old life, and yet I wanted a new life. The problem was that I wanted a new life while holding on to patterns, and that's where the pain came from. I wanted transformation without change. I wanted freedom without letting go. I wanted different results while doing familiar things. But life doesn't work like that. The life we want is often on the other side of change. We're resisting. What saved me was becoming willing. Now, when I surrendered, it wasn't some grand spiritual moment where I suddenly became wise. No. I was tired. I was hurting. I was lost. The pain had become greater than my resistance. I was willing to listen. In fact, if somebody had told me to stand on a table and jump up and down and bark like a dog, I probably would have done it. Not because I was crazy, but because I had finally run out of answers. I had spent years listening to myself, and look where it got me. So when people shared their experience, I listened. When people made suggestions, I listened. When people offered hope, I listened. And the voice in my head didn't say, I already know. The voice in my head said, what do you know about staying clean? They know something. I think I better listen. That simple willingness changed everything, because recovery taught me something I never learned before. The value of humility. The value of being teachable. The value of admitting that somebody else's experience might help save my life. I began taking suggestions, not because the people were perfect, but because they had the answers, but because they had something I wanted. They had peace. They had freedom. They had a way of living that worked, and I wanted that too. At the same time, I had to develop a new understanding of God. Growing up, I had one idea of God. But after surrender, I needed a relationship with a higher power that was alive in the present moment. A loving power, a caring power, a guiding power, a power that wasn't condemning me about helping me. And little by little, I began discovering that this power had been with me all along. Today, I call that power the life living me, and I discovered that growth happens when I stop resisting the guidance of that life. Growth happens when I stop resisting on my way. Growth happens when I become willing to learn. It happens when I trust God's timing more than my timing, because recovery taught me something else. Everything doesn't happen when I want it to happen. Everything happens when I'm ready to receive it. And readiness often begins with surrender. Maybe you're listening today and you're asking God for change. Maybe you're asking for peace. Maybe you're asking for freedom. Maybe you're asking for a better life. If so, ask yourself this question. What change am I resisting? Because many times the blessing is waiting on the other side of the change we refuse to make. The new life is waiting. The new thinking is waiting. This new freedom is waiting. But first, we must become willing. Willing to listen. Willing to learn. Willing to let go. And willing to change. September 26, 1991 taught me that surrender opens the door. Everything that followed taught me that willingness keeps the door open. Today I continue to surrender. Today I continue to learn. I continue to trust the life living me. And every day I do, the life gets brighter. Remember, beloved family, the pain is not in the change. The pain is in resisting the change. Trust the process. Trust God's timing. Trust the life living you. And remember, you are the light. Thank you.